There's currently an uprising in Nepal stemming from allegations of government corruption and a planned social media ban. The police have fired rubber bullets, tear gas, and water cannons at protesters, even live ammunition, killing at least 30. The Prime Minister has stepped down and the military has taken over to negotiate with the protesters. A lot of the media is referring to the army and police collectively as security forces, but there are some key differences. Police officers are much more likely to defend a regime by firing on protesters than soldiers are. In fact, sometimes you get soldiers joining revolutions. There's two main reasons for this. First, while both institutions defend the state through violence, the police focus on enemies within and the army on enemies without. This leads to different ideologies. So the police will use violence against their fellow citizens every day. They're used to seeing them as the enemy. Rather than seeing the nation as a cohesive whole they need to defend, they make a distinction between criminals, usually working class people, protesters, and the people the cops are meant to defend, politicians and the wealthy. The army don't necessarily see things this way. They are used to defending the whole nation. So they won't necessarily see their neighbours as the enemy. That's reserved for foreigners. The second reason that soldiers can be less violent than the cops is that they are less tied to their jobs. So soldiers might be reservists or on a limited enlistment contract, whereas cops see their job as a lifelong career. And particularly when you have conscripts, those soldiers might not want the job at all. Conscripts have played an important part in the Russian Revolution, for example, and even through to the Vietnam War, American conscripts staged mutinies and killed commanding officers. The officers in charge of the army may be quite happy to fire on protesters because they're removed from the violence, but regular soldiers often refuse orders to shoot. This happened during the French Revolution with royalist soldiers refusing to fire, and it's happened much more recently under Assad in Syria or the coup against Morsi in Egypt. That doesn't mean it's all rosy when soldiers are involved. There are plenty of examples of them firing on civilians. And when the army joins an uprising or steps in to restore order, you're kind of rolling the dice. There's a very good chance that they hold on to power. This comes back to that distinction between regular soldiers and officers, because the officers at the top of the army who take control of the state are used to being at the top of a very rigid hierarchy. They're often wary of the democratic norms of civilian government. So I'm certainly no expert on Nepali politics, but hopefully understanding this distinction between cops, soldiers, and army officers helps us understand this aspect a bit better. If you're from Nepal and want to add any context, please do so in the comments.